10x your service design offering with Smaply. Take 20% off any order with This Is HCD 20 off. Let's superpower you and your design team's potential. Sign up at smaply.app. Enjoy the episode from your friends at Smaply, helping support This Is HCD podcast.
Welcome to the Doing Design podcast on This Is HCD, hosted by all the world's best live design and innovation trainers at thisisdoing.com. The Doing Design podcast focuses on all the behind the scenes things actually related to doing innovation and design within organizations, such as design research, facilitation, prototyping, visualization. It's a great sounding board for industries like service design, user experience design, interaction design, content design, product management, and there's probably a host of others in there as well. Now, in this episode, you'll hear from myself, Gerry Scullion, I'm the CEO of This Is Doing, Dr. Chin Han, Dorota Gazy from Standby, based in London and Amsterdam, two world-class design researchers who live and breathe design research every single day. And they're running a session at the Doing Design Festival on June the 18th, and also doing remote research short course on June the 23rd. I'll drop a link to that in the show notes. Now, in this episode, we chat about the shift during the pandemic to full remote research, what this meant for them, how they adapted their craft, and what this means for design researchers moving forward. It's a great one. Let's get straight into it. Folks, how's it been? How are you going? Great to have you here.
Thank you, Gerry. Everything is fine.
Dorota, where are you coming from today?
Depends how global you're looking at it or how local. So this morning, I cycled from Amsterdam to the Amsterdam office, but I'm originated from Poland.
Ah, so you're Polish, but you're living in the Netherlands. You mentioned there, like, you've been in the Netherlands for quite a while.
Yes, already 25 years. So perhaps I should call myself Dutch, but I still don't have the Dutch passport. So I'm Polish on paper.
Yeah, that's only a piece of paper. In your heart, it sounds like you're Dutch, though. Also, we've got Chin here. We've also got the wonderful Dr. Chin Han, who we're just going to refer to as Chin in this conversation. Chin, how's it going? How are you?
Yeah, all good. Yeah, so I'm based in London right now, but I'm Chinese originally.
Yeah, we're here chatting about design research and doing remote research. We've got a session locked in for the Doing Design Festival with both of you. We're all very excited about that. But I guess today we just want to have a little chat around, since the pandemic, I guess, understanding how research is conducted online has become more in focus. But this is something that both of you have been doing for quite a while pre-pandemic, due to the nature of Bas and Heiko, who own Standby, who both of you work for Standby. This is kind of normal. You've been working online doing remote research for quite a while. Is that right?
Yeah, so I think before the pandemic, because of the global scale of many of our research projects, often partially the project is online. But before the pandemic, we also have the chances of flying off to India, to America to do research. But at the same time, I think we feel a little bit guilty about the carbon footprint we leave behind. So we try to, maximize the impact for face-to-face, and also make sure that we use online tools and conduct remote research whenever it's possible and the client is happy with the methodology we propose.
Typically. Dorota, what are your thoughts? And have you had as much experience as Chin in this space as well?
Yes, so I think there are two also things here. On one hand, we don't want to travel if it's actually not needed, but we also want to do local research. So you can, of course, as an external design researcher, go and travel everywhere and be this observer. But we notice that it's good to do global research and at the same time work with local design researchers. So sometimes we kind of meet up, we do it together in a certain location, but sometimes indeed we combine this remote working with our partners and they will do local research. And that works very well. And that's indeed already before the pandemic. And maybe another thing is also that our office is based in London and Amsterdam. So we have also worked as two teams and at the same time as one team, but then remotely.
Yeah. Well, what kind of tools typically, like obviously there's communication tools between the teams that I would presume are probably quite similar to many people, like email and Slack. And is that fair? Yeah, you're using those tools as well. But in terms of research tools, Chin, you mentioned there about using online research tools. What's the tools of choice for, say, face-to-face interviews online? So one-on-ones.
One-on-ones. Actually, there is no tool of choice. I think the nature of being an agency is that you are actually accustomed to a lot of the limits and requirements of the clients, but also we need to consider the limit and the need of the participants. That's for specific projects. So some projects you can use specialized online interview tools that comes with a panel, which means the user is very familiar with these tools, and you can use very niche tools with these people. But with a wider audience, often you need to consider what kind of tool is, most accessible for general public. So sometimes common tools like Zoom was used, but also that's location-based as well. So for example, if you're actually interviewing people from India, Zoom is not really a preferred tool for many people there. They refer to some of the other tools that's better in terms of better internet, better connection, better quality for what they're used to have. Also, for some audiences, I think Dorota would have some examples there, is actually people who are not as tech savvy as we would assume many people are. And for these people, you, as a researcher, it's very important to actually be able to provide backup tools or sort of low-tech tools, not the fancy, flashy Zooms, recording different tracks of audio, that kind of like fancy stuff. But you really need to make sure that you can access the people and that they feel confident and comfortable using it.
It's interesting because I'm thinking back to a time where I was researching in a space that was quite sensitive, and one of my colleagues in Australia reached out to, we were looking at correctional facilities and the family members of correctional facilities. And we were one of the participants that they were researching with was a spouse of someone who was incarcerated. And they exchanged phone numbers to remain in contact, because I'm pretty sure they're part of a diary study. And that person then started to message on WhatsApp. So the spouse started to message on WhatsApp saying, okay, I'm doing the task, because it was the preferred method. It was cheaper. There was no cost associated with SMS text messages. And then crazily enough, the person who was incarcerated was suggested as a friend on Facebook to the researcher. So they'd taken the data. So what are your thoughts around the researcher, like connecting via WhatsApp? It's probably a practice that needs to be considered a little bit, more thoroughly around how that connection is made, because the system behind it, we don't really have much control of. And Facebook's sneakiness will do stuff with that data that's out of our hands. So I guess it's probably connecting with a work phone that's not connected to a personal profile on Facebook is probably one of the best practices. Is that something that you've considered or thought about in your practices?
Yeah, we call it maybe kind of professional hygiene. So how we work around with these tools, we do have guidelines that you never open these things from your personal space, like this personal online space. So you need to follow some of these things to kind of, what you say, to not fall into the system, because you can't change that so easily. So you need to work around. On the other hand, it is a very personal way to speak to this person. So if you're able to maintain this hygiene, and you could use this WhatsApp or this more informal tool, and it will make the setting that you need, you could consider it. But indeed, you always need to check what is this system and what is possible. So that's always in our minds, how to do it. And it's also about balancing, because you can be very professional, very strict, but that you see also with the participants. When you don't open up, that can be via tools, but that is also how you approach someone. They will also stay kind of on a surface level and with distance. So I think that's also a thing that you need to be sensitive about as a design researcher. And I always specify this sensitivity not as being verbal, but using all your senses. So being aware how to script this moment and how to set up these moments to have rich engagements.
Yeah, it's interesting because at the moment I'm doing a research project, and basically the tools of choice have a massive role to play in terms of the outcome that you get. And the choice of, say, Zoom amongst our peers has probably become a standard as regards connecting. But when you're researching in those worlds, Zoom is not, so depending on who you're speaking to. But what I've seen is I diverted to mobile phone and just having a mobile phone conversation. And the conversations are at least twice as rich. They don't have to see me. They don't have to worry about the technology. It works within their world. They're happy to speak openly, happy to speak longer. And I feel there's probably something in that if you're meeting them in their world, it tends to get a richer outcome. Well, what are your thoughts on having a non-visual kind of way of communicating? Because you as a researcher, you lose a lot of the context. It's things that are going on in the background and people walking in and seeing their settings and stuff. What are your thoughts?
I think it's when it comes to capture background, it actually depends on how you script your interview. Because if you're not asking people to show you their surroundings or objects in front of a camera, and if you feel confident in your script that the visual part of seeing people's faces, so for example, this is a follow-up interview. So you have seen each other, you have sort of built some sort of rapport. And I think in that setting, audio-only conversation can be quite comfortable for both sides, because in terms of, I think we want to see people it is more about building rapport and actually being able to see other people hesitation, distracted, zoomed out. That's what you're capturing. It's not really about capturing the contextual information, because it's quite difficult to capture contextual information when you see people sitting under bad lighting, too close to the camera, can't really see anything at the background anyway. So if we actually set out study that we want to study the contextual information, we would actually either script into the interview to have certain moments, ask people to do certain thing in front of computer or show certain thing in front of the camera, or we set up tasks outside the interview for people to actually capture specific contextual information and then send them to me either before or after the interview. So I think the camera is really for us to build rapport and read body language and facial expression.
I'm going to ask a really basic question, but it's something when you're talking there, a little voice inside my head is kind of going, okay, that's interesting. And you say, if you're confident in your script, right? How do you know, and this is to both of you, how do you know when your script is right and you have that confidence? What leads you to get to that place of saying, well, I'm confident in the script now?
So I think you get this confidence. Maybe that's more the case for us. I can only speak from our experience. If you kind of build it also as this conversation that you want to have. You have an educated guess. There is something that you would like to talk about. You need some answers. But of course, you shouldn't go just straight to your goal. You want to have enough space to kind of wander around in this script, to have informal moments of conversation. But in your head, you're ticking off these boxes, kind of, what do I need to get my answer to?
So if the topic is kind of an unknown, it's probably good practice to do it anyway, to have a couple of run-throughs of your script.
We always have tests, and it's usually involving colleagues as observers as well. So I would run my script. I would interview Dorota with 2 other researchers observing. And then after we have run through, and it's not fake answers. I interview her as if she's a participant, and she answered based on her own experiences. And then after that, we pause, and then all 4 of us would actually come back and say, at that moment, certain things are not clear. At this moment, it's better to introduce some other things. So you always have a critical look at what your what you're going to take your participants through. It's not just for interviews, it's for workshops, for diary studies, or everything you have to test.
Yeah, so there's a bit of rigor that's associated with the planning and the preparation for any of those activities.
Yes, and sorry, Gerry, to add, and that's the interesting part. You need to prepare and plan so you are able to improvise and think on your feet in the moment. Because if you still also need to think about planning and wait, how should I phrase this? Then you lose the freedom to actually improvise. And you want to have these both elements in your conversation and in your interview.
Yeah, to get in the flow. Yeah.
It does come with practice. I think once you have interviewed enough people on various topics, you develop that understanding of what might go down well and what might not. But also I think as researchers, you also understand the quiet moments are necessary. People need time to think and reflect before they can answer your questions, and it's okay.
Yeah. So as regards the research planning phase, have you seen any deviation between the worlds of, say, a physical research sort of planning phase versus an online remote planning phase? If so, what are they?
Yes, so there is a difference. The principles are the same. It's about people, it's about being empathic, have a holistic view. But indeed, how you prepare is different, because you need to think of other things now than you would do it in kind of this physical way. So, for example, making your participant comfortable, that's different than bringing someone a cup of tea, just having this informal chat while being at the same table. Immediately also observing, is this person already comfortable? Could we already start in 3 minutes, or do we need more time? And here you need to do it in an online manner. And yes, there is body language, but if someone is not used to speaking via a conference tool, then you need to have like this run-up time or this warm-up time, sending an email, like we are looking forward to speaking with you. So indeed, if a conference tool doesn't work, we will do maybe a phone call. Yeah. So I would say it's different planning. Chin, do you agree?
Yeah. And also, location, I think before in physical workshops or interviews or fieldworks, obviously the location is a limiting aspect. You need to make sure that people can travel to your studio, or they're in a place where you can travel to them, or at least it needs to be in the same country, where I think now it's actually somehow freed us up to speak to people who would usually not really within the scope for the time frame. So if it is basically impossible to interview someone who lives in Wales when I'm in London within, just within one day. But now I can probably interview 2 people in Wales.
Yeah.
Or one in Wales, one in North Ireland.
Yeah. Even the south of Ireland.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get you can do scale a lot better because, that the commuting time but what are we losing in that time? I know myself and Chin have spoken, or maybe it was Dorota actually, have spoken about this period. And one of the best parts of living in Australia was I could have to drive 4 or 5 hours to do an interview. Okay. And I'd have my script and everything be in the back seat of the car, and I'd be driving for 4 or 5 hours, and I'd be playing out scenarios in my head in the preparation. And when I get there was always a sense of hey, great to meet you. We always had a little bit of a period there to get to know each other before we actually start getting into a session. And then I'd have that time of reflection afterwards. And I'd like to know your thoughts on the importance of reflection in design research in particular, because I've seen the scale thing, and I keep on hearing it from people I'm speaking with in the industry that they're doing maybe 5, 6, 7 interviews in a day because the organization is requiring them to get it done quicker, because we can do it online. You don't have to do the commuting now.
No, we never do that. 2 max each day. And after the interview, you block equal amount of time of your session for documentation and note taking. Well, not really note taking, but sort of like it's sort of like organize your notes, but also it's the time for your head to actually
process.
What's the word? Sort of like a process what the conversation has been. Never do back-to-back interviews. I think the location thing I'm referring to is often when you were budgeting in physical world. Basically, I would say, okay, when I recruit, I would not recruit people that's like further than 3 hours drive. Yeah, but now that limit has disappeared. But I wouldn't say I'd suggest people to increase the frequency of interview sessions for one researcher, because you're right, people need that brain time to actually think. And also, I think we ourselves were also experimenting with, offline time, so that you don't have to be like in front of the screen all the time.
Yeah. In
between sessions as well.
Dorota, did you want to add to that?
Yes, it's also to see fieldwork not as a fragmented elements, so loose elements as doing an interview and I can do 5 in a row. But what you said, Gerry, it's this beginning, this startup that could be visualization for yourself, or, like preparing yourself in whatever way, doing the interview and indeed the reflection part, the landing, not only as participant, but you as design researcher or a researcher should also have time to kind of come back and to have this moment of reflection. And traveling time was perfect for that. In the train or even in the car, just rewinding what has been said, what is still kind of top of my mind. So perhaps that is very important to highlight. And I think we should be cautious for that, because it is very easy to plan now very efficiently back-to-back interviews. But we have, of course, the biggest argument is that the quality won't be better. You will have more, but are you still as sharp at the 5th interview as at the 1st? You need to have attention and focus and, still kind of be fit. So, it's something just to have in your routine, as Chin said, block time afterwards. Also, sometimes for me, it doesn't work great if I go immediately into a different call, because I like to make small notes and then go into a call. So my colleagues also know to just plan 20, 30 minutes afterwards. Yeah.
Also, conversations with the participant from their end. So when we used to plan, say, home visit, obviously you've traveled for like 2 hours to get to someone's home. You want to make the most out of it. So it's quite common to have like 2 hour in-house, like, at home interviews where you can't expect people to stay on a conference call with you for 2 hours. Both of you would just be really exhausted by the end of it. So that also means there is a change in the research methodology, where we have been trying to break that one really intense 2 hour conversation down into a few engagements over the internet. In between, maybe like one conversation for 30 minutes in the beginning, and then gave the participants some time to reflect and even collect some of the contextual information we would want to get. So taking pictures around their house, around their routines, visiting the supermarket or whatever your research is about. And then we come back to have another 30-minute interview online and talk about these experiences or the evidence or the contextual information they have collected for us. So it's not just about interviewing people in a different media. It's also about how do you need to treat the conversation differently as well, considering the on-screen time, off-screen time.
Yeah, trying to get my head around that, treating it differently may not come natural to some people. They may just associate it like, okay, we're switching it out. Like a good example of this is my little girl. She does ballet lessons, and she's mad into dancing, and she's 4.5, going on 12. And she basically used to do face-to-face ballet lessons, and she was part of a very kind of well-known dance school in Ireland. And when the pandemic happened, they're like, okay, we're just going to put them online. And all it is a webcam in the corner of the room. And the person was like, no, up and down and left and right. And their interpretation is just mirroring the real world interaction and making it digital. Okay. And something that I'm seeing more in the industry is people getting, okay, well, we would usually be doing research this week. We're just going to use the sort of the medium of online, and we'll mimic and mirror those kind of behaviors. And they haven't considered the aspect of, say, camera placement. I know Adam and Renat have taught us an awful lot about the power of positioning of your camera and the lighting and so forth, to making sure that you're presented in the best possible way to not come across as being more dominant in terms of the use of power. And it's something that I guess I'd love to get your thoughts on, what goes into that kind of preparation as regards a setup, how to make sure that you're coming across in the best possible light.
I'm thinking, because actually dancing is a very good example. If she has like physical classes, it's 3D. So even as a dance teacher, you give totally different feedback. Someone dancing in real life. At the moment that you put it indeed just one-on-one, let's do it on Zoom, you see your students actually only 2D. And that means that you are actually missing an entire kind of level. And I think that's also something while doing remote research. We can't just follow all the steps one-on-one. We need to be considerate of what are we missing, and indeed how can we still find or get these conversations and this information that we are looking for. So as Chin said, that on one hand, there is a certain amount of screen time that we can process and we can be focused. But on the other hand, there are also topics that need to be kind of made in small chunks. So for example, normally we would maybe do this to our interview, but we notice that some topics need some time to reflect as a participant as well. So on those moments, we just cut the interview indeed in two. So we do a warm-up, we get familiar with each other, with the topic, and then we give a home assignment. Say, just think about this. Just check your routines. Maybe something will come up. And especially if you are, I think, also in innovation, there are a lot of speculative design. So you are asking a lot from your participant. You are asking things about the future that they maybe can't even imagine. So to cut this into chunks, it's, I think, great. And then come back, and have a chat about this. So that's partially only an answer to your question, how we kind of change how we plan and how we tackle these interviews, because sometimes it is challenging to get everything in this remote working. Yeah, and maybe what other things you need to that you could take in consideration, that you need to connect different with people. If you would, walk in, you feel the vibe. That's something that we feel in our bodies. We embody it, and we notice when many people, I would say, notice when something is off. You can almost intuitively say, we need still to do something. And what I notice in online research or even teaching, you need to connect first quite long, to check in with everyone, to also give everyone a place in this virtual space. Because that's the thing, you stay a little bit anonymous, for example, in a group session. So it can be as easy as just mentioning everyone. Welcome, Chin. Welcome, Gerry.
Yeah.
And that everyone is like, ooh, I'm here. I need to engage. So these are these small tweaks that you need to be, I think, aware of to not stay at a surface.
Yeah. The ramp up time is what I refer to it as. And I guess just looking at podcasting, I mean, when we started a podcast, This Is HCD, a number of years ago, we did most of them face to face. And there was always a period of time where we used to have a breakfast beforehand. It used to be a breakfast meetup connection thing. And my business, Humana, would pay for breakfast for everyone. And we all sit around and we have breakfast and we talk about the conversation that we were all going to be part of. And it was beautiful. It was a really kind of, it was like going back to basics. And we'd be up at sunrise in Sydney overlooking the harbour where I used to have my office. And that was kind of lost a little bit when we were doing it online. And it used to be a case of once the camera turns on, you're like, hey, how's it going? And we would jump straight in. But now the way we do it is I allocate an hour and a half, and the first half hour is just chatting. And I mean, it's kind of like my goal, make you laugh. Okay, right? Make people laugh. And luckily I've got some props around here that I can throw in and make people laugh with. But that's really important, I think, as well, in terms of disarming. And
Yes.
where do you look for your inspiration and being able to improve on that? So who do you look to? I know Chin and Cheik and Bas and Dorota, you've got years of experience, but these areas are kind of new to us all, and we're kind of learning as we go. But where do you look for inspiration in that space? I guess, Dorota, you mentioned there that you're now a Zumba teacher.
Yeah.
And before you go to do a dance class, presumably you warm up, you do some stretches and stuff. Is there anything that you can learn from that parallel that you can carry forward into your research sessions?
Yes, for sure. Maybe I'm also this person that doesn't make a very strict, would I say it, cut between private, my personal life and my working life, because indeed there are things that you can use.
Yeah.
You can make these cross links, but there is one kind of disclaimer, I think I should say. Not everyone has to be this kind of host or take this role. If you're not comfortable with that, I think you should just have kind of the basics there and put your personality at front, and that can be different, and that's fine. But for me, I feel quite comfortable, and that came actually with my background, and that is dancing. I did also competitions, and actually, I was always very nervous while going on the dance floor, and I had to do a final. It was terrible. And I had the same with speaking. So one day, actually, my tutor when I did my master art history, this is like a very personal story that I will share with you. He said, the only thing that you did well is that you could stand and keep on standing while presenting. Yes. So I was a bit like, ouch, that hurts. And I don't know if I would recommend coaches or teachers to give such a feedback. But for me, it was kind of my turning point, because I thought, okay, now I will take every opportunity that I can have to present or to speak publicly.
Yeah.
So for me, that was just the practice. That is also something that Chin often repeats. You need to do it often. It needs to get in your body, and that's embodiment. And I think we forget how comfortable we need first to get in our bodies and with the things that we are doing before having this natural feeling. So the first 10 times you will always feel awkward, but it needs this practice. And that's something that you see in physical exercise, but also in crafts. In craft, you see a repetition of something. If it's working with wood or making sculptures, that is just doing it over and over and over again, like feeling it. So it's time. It's making kind of these flight hours. I don't know, that's what we say in the Netherlands. You need to make these hours and keeping your own, I think, identity. So I like to make jokes. So each class, when I start or also interview, I just tell something funny. I think, Gerry, you have the same. And just something funny from my own experience. Yeah.
And it makes people laugh and smile and stuff. Folks, we could speak for hours, but we're not going to speak to hours. We're going to be speaking more about this at the Doing Design Festival on June the 18th. But there's a breakout session where you can ask Dorota and Chin anything really about doing online research. And there's also a course that follows up on June the 23rd. I think it's a Wednesday, which goes into more of a deep dive into this, and the tickets are on sale now. You can also do a combo deal, so you can get a ticket for that course and also get a ticket for the event as well, and you can save €149, I think it is. So sorry to seem like a salesman, but this is a fantastic course, and like these, both Dorota and Chin, I look to as kind of world leaders, not just leaders in the space of design research. So again, thank you so much for giving your time, your input, and sharing stories with us today.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun.
So there you have it. If you like this episode, feel free to visit thisishcd.com, where you can access our back catalogue of over 100 episodes, with episodes related to service design, product management, design research, and much, much more. Now, if you're interested in design and innovation training, feel free to check out our business, thisisdoing.com, where you can join online classrooms and learn from the world's best design and innovation leaders. Join the This Is HCD newsletter, where you'll receive updates from the network, and also, if you're interested, apply to join the Slack community on thisishcd.com. Stay safe, and until next time, take care.